For this next section, we're going to talk about an exciting initiative centered here at Stanford, but involving many people, called the 100-Year Study of AI. I'm the faculty director of it, and I'll just tell you that I got a call from the development office about 2 years ago saying, there's somebody who wants to give us money, but we're not sure we should take it. So that got my attention. And in fact, before they told me the idea, I said, well, just take it. But they said, no, we need to be, we take, and this is true, we take our development responsibilities to donors very seriously. And this person, this donor, wants us to do something for 100 years. And none of us are going to be around, and we're used to funding students, funding faculty, but they want us to actually do something for 100 years, which is to follow this field of artificial intelligence and kind of report on it on a regular basis. And I said, well, I still think that's not only a great idea, but you should take the money. So they did, and they said, but Russ, we have one thing. We need you to be the faculty director to make sure that the wishes of the donor are honored and that we actually do what the donor would like us to do. So what we're going to tell you now with my colleagues is exactly what this 100-year study is and what it will be doing, and in some sense, what it already has done. So let me just introduce the three panelists who are going to give us vignettes, and then we'll get right to it. So first, Dr. Barbara Grosz is the Higgins Professor of Natural Sciences at Harvard School of Engineering and Applied Science. She's the one in the blue. Barbara has made seminal contributions in natural language processing and multi-agent systems research. She received the 2015 IJCAI, an international AI organization, Research Excellence Award, and is an elected member of the American Philosophical Society and the National Academy of Engineering. Next to Barbara is Milind Tambe. Milind is a professor of computer science and industrial engineering at the University of Southern California. Milind's basic work in multi-agent systems has led to diverse applications in detecting and preventing poaching and illegal fishing, as well as algorithms for optimized deployment of security and surveillance teams at LAX Airport, the U.S. Coast Guard, the Federal Air Marshal Service, and the beloved TSA. Next to Milind is my colleague Yoav Shalom, principal scientist at Google and professor emeritus from Stanford here. Yoav's basic research in logic and game theory is widely recognized in academia, but has also led to the creation of 4 successful companies in the area of electronic commerce, social networks, and productivity software. So let's kick off by asking Barbara, who's the chair of our standing committee at the AI 100 project, as we informally know it, to start us off.
Thank you, Russ. Good evening, and thanks to everyone who has organized this wonderful event and to the visitors from the Global Entrepreneurship meeting. So the 100-year study of artificial intelligence, which I'll refer to going forward as AI 100, is just about a year and a half old, and what I'm going to try, so it's in its infancy, I'm going to try to give you an overview of the motivation and the goals, and also tell you a bit about where we have gotten in this first year and a half. The endowing of this program, which Russ mentioned to you, reflects a recognition that the field of artificial intelligence has matured to the point that its technologies based on it are entering the world and affecting life in many, many different facets. The choice of a university as the home, reflects an appreciation for the enduring nature of universities. They live longer than most institutions we know, and the rich environments that they provide for deep thought over a long period of time, as well as many of them, and I will say notably Stanford, providing an environment for broadly cross-disciplinary investigations. They also have become hotbeds of innovation and advise governments. This study actually has roots back in an earlier study that Eric Horvitz, when he was president of the Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence, convened. And it's modeled on this earlier effort, which recognized AI as it was beginning to come into the world in this way, brought together a group of about 15 people to reflect on what might be happening in the near term and in the longer term, and to situate that in an understanding of the impact on society. So the idea was to look at where the technology was, to provide an expert view in where it might be going, but to take seriously the ways in which it would affect people, the communities they live in, and society as a whole. What were some of the ethical challenges that might arise? So the 100-year study, based on that and its impact on the field, and in some sense reflecting on the centuries of fiction written by people who imagined what would happen if intelligent agents created by people were suddenly amongst us, has as its goal to bring together on a recurrent basis, so over time, over this whole period of 100 years, and maybe longer if the university manages the endowment well, bring together experts who would be able to reflect on the technology, where it was and where it was going, but not just AI technologists and AI researchers, but also people who understood people and societies and their communities, so that we could reflect on how this technology might affect society and on how we might be proactive in influencing the design of systems, and to understand also the interplay between design and policy and regulation. So this is just one example from the framing memo for the gift that laid out more than a dozen ideas that this study might think about understanding and investigating. And I chose this because it really highlights the opportunity cost of not bringing AI into the world. So, for example, even today, if AI were more actively used in certain hospital settings, we could help save some of the 100,000 lives that are lost to medical errors. But of course, in order to make that happen, we have to be able to get people to trust and understand how AI systems work, and for those systems to work well with people. And that's a theme I think you'll hear from other speakers tonight. So not systems replacing people, but systems complementing people. So how is this study organized? It's led by the faculty director, from whom you've just heard, and a small standing committee. The membership of this committee will change over time, but the idea is to keep it around 6 or 7 people. You can see the people who are currently on the standing committee now. They're from different universities and from industry, from several different countries, and each of them is from a different field of artificial intelligence. The idea of the study is syncopated over time. So the standing committee was formed in the beginning of 2015. It identified mid-2015 a first study panel to undertake the first study. And over time, you'll see this syncopation. So every 5 years, we expect to appoint a study panel and to give it a mission, a topical focus. During this year, we've also identified a complementary activity, an ongoing tracking activity aimed at looking at different facets of AI and tracking them over time. And you'll hear a bit more about that from Yoav Shoham later, so I'm not going to say more here. But this, in some sense, complements the 5-year pattern by having something that's constantly going on. And finally, I want to say about the 100-year study that it has 4 different intended audiences, and so it's a challenge to produce a report for these different audiences, but we think it's very important to reach all of them. So researchers pointing out opportunities and challenges, the general public making the technology accessible and an understanding of the technology accessible, which is tremendously important for building trust, industry industry to identify where new opportunities are for them to invest resources, and finally, government as they make policy and look for what they might drive forward. So, as I mentioned, we appointed about 9 months ago the first study panel, and the charge to them was to look at AI over the next 15 years and look at the potential influences on daily life, with first looking at the scientific and engineering and legal areas, legal efforts that might bring AI successfully into daily life, and then focusing in particular on how to shape those technologies for social good. And I want to pause here and say why we chose this kind of focus. We did, in trying to frame a charge to the committee, think first about doing surveys of AI. We thought also about looking at particular techniques, for example, in machine learning. And we thought a lot about looking at particular application areas, for example, healthcare. As we discussed this, though, we realized that AI's societal impact will not be in a vacuum, and that AI technologies don't operate in a vacuum either, and that grounding this study in some part of the real world was important to doing the assessment. So the focus that we chose, which is on urban regions, and in order to focus more on a North American city, was in particular to get this kind of grounding of the examination in something that AI might do in the real world. This is a list of the people on the first study panel, and I want just to point out they're from many different institutions. Some of them are from companies, some from academic institutions, and that we included economists, policy experts, and lawyers, as well as people in many fields of AI. So I want to segue now into a sneak peek of the areas of focus of the study. The study panel from all of the different aspects of life in urban areas chose the 8 that you see on this slide. Some of them are rather near term and when we expect to see them prevalent in the world, and transportation is one of those. Some are further out. For example, taking AI and making it work for people in low resource communities. The areas also differ, and I've tried to make a correspondence between the two sides of the slide here, in the different challenges that they put forward. And so I've just indicated some of that in this slide. You'll now get a deeper sneak peek at the 3 in blue from my colleague Milan Tambe, who was on the study panel.